If you're trying to lose belly fat, are there foods you should avoid? Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Young, a naturopathic doctor in Toronto. This is the third part of a series of videos that will take a pragmatic look at fat loss. We're hoping that with this information, you'll be better able to decide for yourself what therapies or interventions may be useful for your situation. Please subscribe for more videos to help with your weight loss journey. There are many dietary strategies that help reduce belly fat, as well as reduce fat most anywhere else. Knowing how they work, however, will prevent you from inadvertently also avoiding foods that might actually be useful for fat burning or are unnecessary to avoid. So with that in mind, let's get into part 3, foods to avoid to reduce fat. I suggest watching part 1 of this series if you haven't, since it lays down basic knowledge about fat metabolism that will help put the information of this video into perspective. Let's quickly recall from part 1 that there isn't really any natural way to control where our body stores fat. Rather, it will choose certain areas, like our belly, to store fat, if what you're eating causes it to generate a lot of fat. Avoiding carbohydrate. The body is able to convert most of our food into fat to be stored in our body. Carbohydrates are one of the foods converted quite easily and efficiently into fat. But effectively dealing with belly fat is a little more complicated than simply avoiding all carbohydrates. Allow me to introduce the glycemic index. The glycemic index is the speed at which any carbohydrate-containing food breaks down and turns into sugar in the bloodstream. Foods with higher glycemic indexes break down faster, more quickly increase sugar levels in the blood, and cause higher spikes in insulin. The spike in insulin is your body's response to the rapid increase in sugar in your bloodstream. The large spikes in sugar and insulin force the body to either use it all up quickly, like an intense exercise, or if the sugar isn't used up fast enough, it becomes quickly stored as fat in the body. Carbohydrates can be broken down into simple and complex carbs. Simple carbs have a higher glycemic index and are most associated with sugary, sweet-tasting foods or drinks. However, just because something doesn't taste overly sweet doesn't mean it's low in simple carbohydrates. Simple carbs can be found in higher amounts in many types of breads, pastries, pasta, noodles, and vitamin or energy drinks. Generally, the more refined or processed the carbohydrate is, like you might find in prepackaged granola bars versus homemade granola, the greater the proportion of simple carbohydrates. Complex carbs tend to be found in seeds, beans, whole grains, and vegetables, and have a lower glycemic index. Fresher, less processed foods tend to have more complex carbs. For example, fresh oranges will have a lower glycemic index than orange juice, or fresh roasted peanuts will have a lower glycemic index than peanut butter. Complex carbs break down into sugar much slower in the bloodstream. The slower rise in sugar and insulin means it has more time to be burned as fuel in your body throughout the day, and is less likely to be stored as fat right away. While all simple carbs can be converted easily into fat, in terms of health, consuming different types of carbs appear to make a difference. For example, the sugar fructose and the closely related sucrose appear to create more visceral fat deposits over the sugar glucose. More visceral fat is associated with higher risks of cardiovascular disease. This appears to be mostly a problem in processed foods sweetened by fructose or sucrose, since eating fresh fruits that contain these sugars don't appear to have any significant effects on visceral fat. It may have to do with the fact that consuming the whole fruit also consumes other beneficial components, like soluble fibers, which helps to negate the effects of fructose or sucrose. So how should you implement this? Well, it depends on what works well for you. If you have an extraordinary amount of discipline, you can choose to avoid all sources of carbohydrate and effectively put yourself on a very low carbohydrate diet. It would likely be one of the more quick and effective ways of losing fat. However, if you're like the rest of us, removing all sources of carbohydrate may be unnecessary. Removing sources of simple carbohydrates is a good idea. However, consuming small amounts of complex carbs, like from fruits or lentils as you might see in the Mediterranean diet, wouldn't be overly detrimental to your fat loss. If you do allow yourself small amounts of complex carb, aim for unprocessed and fresh as much as possible, like having fresh fruits or nuts. When it's been heavily processed, like in juices, jams, pastes, or dehydrated or processed snacks, the glycemic index is likely to increase, making the complex carb act more like a simple carb in the body. Also make sure you're properly restricting overall calories, since extra calories, even if it's from complex carbs, will still be stored by the body as fat. You should also consider increasing your physical activity, since complex carbs still need to be burned away throughout the day, or it will eventually end up as fat as well. Avoiding alcohol. The body is also particularly efficient at converting alcohol into fat. Alcohol can also negatively affect the liver's ability to metabolize fat properly. This can lead to generated fat being deposited into unusual areas, like within the liver itself. This is why too much alcohol is often associated with fatty liver and liver damage. That being said, I've noticed from my experience that most patients are more likely to overconsume simple carbohydrates rather than alcohol. It may have to do with the fact that people can only drink so much alcohol before getting sick, but can easily consume large amounts of carbohydrate without batting an eyelid. For example, a glass of wine has around 120 kilocalories, while a single Tim Hortons muffin has around 400 kilocalories. From a calorie perspective, one muffin would be about 3 to 4 glasses of wine, and 2 muffins has more calories than the entire bottle of wine. Of course, calories are not the only thing affecting fat deposition, but having a few muffins a day is not uncommon. While most people aren't consuming a whole bottle of wine per day, well, maybe some are. The types of alcohol least likely to increase belly fat would be lower percentage, less sugary alcohols. Cocktails made by mixing sugary syrups or soda with vodka or rum would be the ones to avoid. Drier wines and spirits by itself or low-carb beers are some of your better options. Make sure you take into account the amount you're consuming. The same volume of wine has more calories than beer. However, beer is usually consumed per can, which has more calories than the standard glass of wine. So let's put alcohol into a practical perspective. If you have a fatty liver or have any liver issues, it would probably be a good idea to avoid alcohol altogether. But if you're healthy, so long as your intake is mild, like 1 to 2 glasses of dry wine a week, it shouldn't be a huge problem. However, if you don't miss alcohol, I recommend just eliminating it as well. In our next video of this series, we'll take a look at what foods you should eat if you're trying to burn fat. What foods do you avoid to help your body burn fat? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you found this video helpful, please leave me a like. As before, I'm Dr. Brian Young, bringing you weight loss info on this channel. Subscribe and hit the notification bell if you're interested in learning more, and share with someone you know who can use the help.